Let's start with this question, chaps, from Chris on Instagram. Given how fancied Liverpool were in all four competitions earlier this season, would only winning the Premier League actually make their season feel fairly underwhelming? We touched on this on the pod yesterday, Andy Brassel. Do you think that's still the case?
Yes, it would, but no, it shouldn't. I think there can be, separate how it does feel and how it should feel, because them winning the Premier League will be an amazing achievement, particularly in Arne Slot's first season. I think if you look at the football they've played the best football they've played in absolutely years as well. So much of it is owed to Klopp, clearly. But I think so much of when you go out of the Champions League, it's not about that you go out of the Champions League, because it's a cup competition that only one team can win. It's about the manner and the circumstances in which you go out of the Champions League. And having played such unbelievable football, the best football in the Champions League by a mile, the results in the Champions League group stage did not underline how good Liverpool were. Mm-hmm. They were even better than those results suggested. They played some of the best football we've seen in the Champions League, I would say, in the last 5 or 10 years.
All right.
It was that good. To then get to the point where we go out in the last 16, even if it's against a team of amazing quality who are playing very, very well, it's quite difficult to digest. And that it's happened like before the end of March, again, is quite difficult to digest. So knowing that Liverpool could have won and certainly had the quality to win the Champions League this season and haven't, will sort of stick in the back of the mind, especially with the feeling that the Premier League was already in the bag. It almost seems, like you were saying yesterday, Marcus, that almost a Premier League seems like, or I think Jim was saying actually, that the Premier League is a great thing in itself, but it feels like it's not enough to express quite how good they are. Similar feeling to Inter, who had a better team last season than the one that lost in the Champions League final very narrowly to Manchester City, but they went out in the last 16 to Atletico Madrid and they were totally beating themselves up over it.
Yeah, I can imagine they would have been. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I certainly was talking about Liverpool genuinely on for a quadruple. I say a quadruple, it's the quadruple. Jose Mourinho, if you win the Community Shield or something.
Yeah. Or the quiz machine down the pub.
Yeah, there you go. And then when Plymouth Argyle beat them in the FA Cup, I remember everything. Oh, blimey. So, no classic treble for them, but they still are very much on for a treble. And now out the Champions League, I mean, it is a sickener, Luke. There's no two ways about that. But this game tomorrow, I think I do kind of very, very tentatively go along with the idea that it could feel a touch underwhelming. But again, that's sitting here as a neutral, because for Liverpool fans, having only won the Premier League once in their history, I mean, they've got the same amount of Premier Leagues. I know football, was a thing before the Premier League started. But when you look at Premier League winners, as we do, if there's any credence in that, they've got the same amount of Premier League titles as Blackburn Rovers and Leicester City, which seems crazy.
They're getting strays. They've got enough problems of their own, those two teams. Leave them out of it.
That's why I'm bringing them in.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking to me that Venke's ownership of Blackburn delivered another Premier League title by now.
All because of that ash cloud.
Yeah, and the Premier League title. It's a light, but what I did say yesterday was, for me, the Premier League is your number one priority. So if you achieve that priority, then it's not a bad... No one is suggesting at all. I mean, Chris has said, does it seem fairly underwhelming? And he's put the word fairly in front of underwhelming there. So, all in all, I'm labouring to ask you what your opinion is on this.
I think because it's Liverpool, the Premier League is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
The more telling stat for me, rather than the Premier League thing you just talked about there, is that they've won one league title in 35 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably... if they're not the biggest club in England, they're in the top two, right, along with Manchester United.
So the biggest underachieving side in.
Well, I just think
you have.
I just think you have to say, it's the two things. It's very difficult to get those two things to sit happily. Mm-hmm. On one hand, one of the biggest clubs in England and Europe, and obviously the Europe thing's slightly different because they've won six European Cups. but at the same time not won a domestic title beyond 1 in 35 years. It's just incredible. It's incredible stats. So for them,
It's mad, isn't it?
there's an element to that where they probably feel like they need to prove their worth more and more domestically. And there's other reasons for it as well. Andy has touched on them there, which is that to me it feels like winning your domestic league across 38 games is far more indicative. It's far more indicative of how good a team you are, because the European competition is at some point going to become a knockout, and then you get matched up against some really good teams, and it really comes down to how good you are on 1 day or 2 days. That's really it. As Andy told us yesterday, you've got the first one and the sequel. That's all you've got in terms of judging your worth against another team when they come up against a very good PSG team who look like they've clicked. Look, the way to answer this question comprehensively, I think, is probably that the start of the season, league champions, are you going to take it all day long because they've got a new manager in? There's so many variables. I don't know what's going to happen. It could have been a disaster.
Well,
could have been out of a job by now.
You don't imagine that City are going to be like City are this season
I think it's no ways. It may feel slightly underwhelming given that they gave themselves the chance in the League Cup final, which is, this time of recording hasn't happened yet, and because they went out with such a whimper against Plymouth in the FA Cup. And I think the PSG thing, my take on it is slightly different to Jim's. I think the PSG thing is just fair enough. You come up against a better team, that's how it goes. So in all that context, maybe it's it's the hope that kills you. But at the start of the season, Liverpool winning the league title would be massive, and it still is massive. And the way the way they're likely to do it as well is also factors in. And the final thing I would just say is, testament to how good they've been domestically this season. If they've been in a slightly different position, couple of points clear, and they lose the League Cup final, you start thinking, the wheels are going to come off entirely. Yeah. That's not going to happen now.
So I think we can look.
They're so far ahead.
I think you're right to look at the difference in the question between feel and is.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's a big difference. But I think the other big difference is inside Liverpool and outside Liverpool, because you talked about it there, the one title in 30 plus years, and that was one in COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted it for so long, and they had to celebrate it in an empty stadium. Now, look, I know they were still pleased to win the Premier League, but for Liverpool to win the Premier League, prove that they're still a big team post Klopp, and for the whole city to be able to celebrate it on the streets, there will be nothing that will feel underwhelming about that.
100%.
And so I suppose hearing you chaps chat about that has made me come down to say, on the side of no, it won't. So it will feel underwhelming for perhaps a couple of weeks after the League Cup final, should they not win it.
Yeah.
Then that will kind of get forgotten about, I think, by Liverpool and a lot of neutrals, because when they do win the league and they win it by such a handsome margin, and you'll see the scenes of celebration and all the rest of it, I don't think any Liverpool fan, once the Premier League title is handed over, whether that's at the end of April or whenever it is, or if they say, no, just give us the trophy on the final day, or the last game at Anfield, whatever it is, when those scenes of celebration happen, and as you say, everyone will be out in the streets and so on, I don't think anybody will go, yeah, but that League Cup final. I don't think they will. So I think you're right to say that. So,
and I also think, Marcus, if they do lose the Premier League from here, well, it'll be historic for other reasons. I'm telling you.
But who are they going to lose it to?
Absolutely unprecedented. No, they won't be able to. They won't. The other teams aren't good enough. No, when they're good.
But there's all this chat. They'll probably go win the League Cup final tomorrow and do the domestic double. So it wouldn't feel underwhelming, certainly.
No.
Good question, Chris. Like it. Okay, let's have a quick break, and after which we'll answer more of your questions. Andy, you've got the next one on Discord.
It is from Carlos on Discord. Who is the greatest English manager of the Premier League era? If Eddie Howe takes Newcastle to a Carabao Cup win, does he take the top spot? Well, look, I'm not trying to telegraph your answer or anything, Marcus, but I might prod it across to a Fulham supporter.
Yeah.
It's not the man I was going to say, actually. I would say... Probably. And it's slim pickings.
That's the one point to make. That's
it's
the one
really
point to
slim
make.
pickings.
Because the Premier League era part of it's irrelevant because none of them ever won it.
Yeah. And it really is actually quite a stain on English football that an English manager has never won the Premier League, and other than Keegan, has never come close to it, really. So the absolute dearth of really top-flight English... Well, not top-flight, top-level... There's no elite level English manager. You really have to go back through the decades, and you see, because there is a rich history of English coaches. Again from decades gone by, but since you'd probably say the 90s onwards, it's been piss poor. Which means I would probably have to say Harry Redknapp. He won the FA Cup. With Portsmouth. I understand Portsmouth were being a bit naughty back in those days, but it was still an achievement.
He was the first manager to qualify Spurs for the Champions League.
Exactly, yeah. He got them in the Champions League. And
I know annoyed with David Bentley about emptying that bucket of water over him.
Didn't he take West Ham to 5th as well in the Premier League?
Yeah. And I understand, when he was at Spurs and he kept saying things like, well, they've never had it here, never had it so good here and all that kind of stuff. Like some of the quotes...
He's a dickhead.
Yeah, some of the quotes were a bit of a shame. But I would probably go for Redknapp because the FA Cup is a bigger trophy to win than the League Cup. Because if you go in on League Cup wins, I mean, you might mention Steve McLaren, and I don't think
Marcus, it's also worth more grist to your mill, more kind of strength to your theory is the fact that I think it's only David Moyes, Arsene Wenger, and Alex Ferguson that have managed more Premier League games than him.
Yeah,
as well.
It's a great longevity,
and the reason that's important is because. To be a manager and to earn your right to manage in the Premier League is an achievement in itself, right? There's loads of managers out there who've managed hundreds of games but have never quite made it to the very top level. So the fact that
Steve Bruce,
well, he could be one of them, but he
like 1,000 games. I mean,
Warnock as well.
Yeah,
I mean, there's loads of them. The fact that his longevity as a Premier League manager is pretty.
That can't be questioned.
No.
Yeah, so I would go. Yeah, Redknapp's got that trophy. Got Spurs into the Champions League, so on and so forth. So I would probably say Redknapp, but very happy to hear what other people have got to say.
So where do we rank, I guess, Keegan, Hodgson,
Robson,
Allardyce,
Robson?
Sir Bobby Robson, undoubtedly.
Yeah. I mean, Robson's best stuff, you would say, happened outside of England.
And before the Premier League, probably.
Yeah, which is why I did think about Robson. I mean,
they won the Cup when he was Cup with Barca in 97.
Well, he won a few trophies that year. Was it 96 or 97? Certainly around then. Copa del Rey, and they were pretty good in the Cups. But yes, but we're talking specifically Premier League.
It's Premier League era. I said Premier League era. I didn't say in the Premier League because none of them won the Premier League anyway.
Picking Newcastle up again post Keegan was really impressive. He made a great team. He took them back into the Champions League, and they were good in the Champions League as well. Yeah, but I think like Keegan, I don't think you can dispute. I mean, he created one of the most exciting teams in Premier League history and came within a whisker of winning the Premier League. So Keegan definitely deserves to be in there. But I do want to have a word for Hodgson. I'll leave the best of that to you because I do think in a number of different contexts he's done a great job, and people look at the Liverpool one a little bit too much because it's his highest profile Premier League job. But I think Sam Allardyce, it goes back to what we were saying about Harry Redknapp in a way, in that because people just don't like him, really, for want of a better way of putting it, it leads to people diminishing his achievements a little bit.
Yeah,
now,
I think so.
Of course, the back end of Allardyce is not amazing. When you look at Leeds, Everton, for example, West Brom, that's not great. But if you're realistic and you look at the history of football managers / coaches, the very best ones tend to have like 10 years tops at the absolute peak of their powers. And because people have a certain view of Allardyce, because of his playing background, because he was at Bolton for ages, people overlook the fact that he was a total innovator in the time that he was at Bolton, in terms of analysis, in terms of coaching, in terms of the way his team set up, getting them to overachieve, getting them into Europe, persuading huge players to come and play for Bolton. I mean, all of those things, I think, put him in this bracket.
And also, the thing you've missed on from that stuff with Sam Allardyce at Bolton, which I think is probably the thing that underpins all of it, is 4 top 10 Premier League finishes in a row.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing.
It's all very well to be an innovative coach and bring these players in and grab headlines with a Ivan Campo here or a JJ Okocha there, but to blend that in and do 4 top 10 finishes in the Premier League in a row. Now, I know there's different reasons for this. I know football's changed since then, but we're at Bolton now. Yeah. It's still, you still got to bear that in mind. So I think he's definitely.
It seems like a different century, doesn't it?
You've hit on the two main reasons why he's not as well respected. One is irritating personality, and 2 is his kind of that kind of all political life ends in failure type feeling to his management career, because he fails to save West Brom. He fails to. Was it Leeds he was at for a bit as well?
Yeah.
But he did do a really good job of keeping a lot of unfancy teams in the league as well. So I think he's got to be a consideration. I think Hodgson for the Fulham stuff, taking them to the Europa League final as well. I mean, that was an incredible season. I mean, that is in terms of, given that no English manager has won the league, as we keep saying. If you were to look at standout seasons, individual seasons, I mean, the teams that Fulham beat in the Europa League that season, it will live. I mean, it has lived long in the memory. I went to the Craven Cottage a couple of times that season. Incredible stuff. Really, really was good.
The fact that they qualified for the Europa League as well, because one might think, what was it, like a 9th place finish or something? No, you had to, for Fulham to finish that high. It was impressive.
And he's also done,
saved them from relegation, of course.
But that's almost the biggest bit, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So managed to turn that around, gets into Europe, and then is a whisker away from winning the Europa League.
And Blackburn had a bit of a little bit of a tail after they won the Premier League in '95. They still had a little bit of a long tail after that, because Hodgson delivered them a really good finish as well a few years later.
He would get sacked, but
he did though. He ultimately got them to 6th.
But then started really well. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of candidates, but realistically,
but the candidates. There's
the framing of this conversation.
Well, exactly.
Like the best in the rest type.
Because you saying Allardyce had 4 top 10 finishes. I agree with you.
At Bolton.
No. I agree. That's good. But I mean, again, if you're talking about the other nationalities, they go, well, he's won 2 league titles. He had 5 trophies.
That's not the discussion.
Well, no, it isn't, Andy. Because again, I stress. Hence, why the question is quite a tricky one and quite sort of relevant in a funny way. As Thomas Tuchel, yesterday announced his England squad. There isn't an Englishman in charge of England, because you look at the candidates and you think, well, if you can get Tuchel, that's a much better appointment, because again, it's such an area that it's so frustrating with the lack of good English coaches.
I guess
Howe could go on to be.
I don't think Howe's in there at the moment.
Not at the moment, no.
Yeah, I guess that's the other part of Carlos's question, really, isn't it?
Yeah, because even the big feather in his cap at the time of recording, which is a 4th place finish with Newcastle, to get them into the Champions League, delivering them that first Champions League for years. Well, the reality is Robson delivered them 3rd and got them into the Champions League.
Yeah, but I mean, he took over a terrible, terrible team that had been crippled by over a decade of neglect. He's completely changed them from the least athletic team in the Premier League to the most athletic team in the Premier League. He's brought hope back to the city. He's made some of those players, you think of the big players he's brought in, he's made some of the players who didn't look like Premier League players into good Premier League players. Jacob Murphy being an example, Joe Willock maybe being another. You could argue.
Find Almiron was doing that for years.
Yeah.
And Howe got rid of him.
Fabian Schär, you could.
Schär's always been a quality player.
No, yeah, but he never looked like fulfilling that early potential. Not in the period before Eddie Howe got there. He is an authentic coach with players. I guess the question is, it's a little bit like Pochettino not getting his cup at Spurs. Does the Carabao Cup really crown him? I know you could argue it's the context of they haven't won a trophy domestically in 70 years and the fact that they'd be beating Liverpool in the final if they were to do that. But does a Carabao Cup win, as opposed to, as you say, a top 4 finish? And for my money, they desperately, desperately need to qualify for the Champions League this season. Is a Carabao Cup win bigger than that?
Well, Andy, I'll say that Gareth Southgate won the UEFA Nations League, greatest England manager of all time for me.
Yeah. But Eddie Howe winning the Carabao Cup elevates him in Newcastle United circles more than it elevates him in English manager circles.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
So I don't think he's in there yet.
But I think he could be, though. I think he is the one.
But it doesn't take anything away from him.
No.
Don't take anything away from Jason Tyndall.
I was going to say,
that comes a package. It's Clough and Taylor.
There should be a Jason Tyndall shaped asterisk. Probably with sunglasses on and some really white teeth over the top of what Eddie Howe achieves. Well, that's a really good question, though, as you can tell from how much we really thought about the answer, Carlos. So thanks for that.
So do you have a definitive answer? Because I think I'd go Harry Redknapp.
Yeah, I'm looking for reasons to not go Redknapp or Allardyce, so I'll go Robson. But I think all 3 of them are candidates.
I'm going Allardyce just to annoy you.
There you go.
Hey,
although with your current look, you might murder me at a truck stop.
I could do.
So
I could do. It's always a possibility.
Yes, a lorry stop, Andy.
Yeah. A gas station. What about this from Jack on Instagram, who says, this is a good one actually, what do you make of Gerard Piqué's proposal of awarding 0 points to both teams if a match finishes 0-0, 0-0, nothing.
May
Craig
I
Brown
be
would
the
say.
first to say,
Okay.
what an absolute prank.
Pico's noisy, isn't he? He's noisy these days.
The
he always
problem
was
is,
Noisier than fucking Wenger.
He's
Yeah,
giving me
sure.
sympathy to Sergio Ramos when he says things like that.
I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Despite the fact he's still out there doing it in Mexico, irritating people in another continent now. But the thing with Piqué is you've got to realise the place that he's coming from. Now, I think
Spain.
A very lofty one.
Spain.
Yeah, but he is someone who has got a great playing career behind him. He's very intelligent. He's very ambitious. There is so much that he could give back to football. And I've thought for a long time, and a lot of people have thought for a long time, that he will be a really good Barcelona president one day.
Yeah, okay.
But
Well, people
not-
thought about him as a politician as well.
But that's the problem. He has decided, you've got to look at where he's coming from, because he is coming from a place where he doesn't care about what's best for football. If you look at what he's doing now, he could be doing so much for the good of football, but instead he's doing the Kings League not because he feels that football needs something that's more entertaining. He wants something that he can own.
Sure.
And you can't own football, so he wants a different format that he can own. Basically, it's like Florentino Perez in the Super League.
Right.
He's just like a young Florentino Perez, and that is not a compliment.
No, I don't see how it could be.
So that's one of the most stringent and focused ad hominem attacks I've heard from you, Andy. But the question is, should teams get no points for a 0-0 result?
I'm guessing Eddie
And
doesn't think
what do I
I'm
make
reading
of it?
between the lines here. I suggest you probably think no.
I broadly don't agree.
Okay, shall I give you a more professional answer that's not attacking the person, just having a conversation, suggesting ideas?
Professional?
I like it when you go on the attack.
I think it's a bad idea
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, of course, I broadly agree with everything Andy says there. But I think you could add another dimension to it and say, when people suggest this, what they and it has been suggested before. It's not just Piqué's original idea. This has been something that's been knocking about for a little while, particularly during that period of the Premier League, maybe 15-ish years ago, when the big teams, it was getting boring between the big teams. It was really, really cagey. I can't remember the specific era, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Could Mourinho and Benitez have been involved?
There we go. People were suggesting it then. The issue with it is that for a lot of teams in a lot of circumstances at certain times of the season, a 0-0 was an absolutely banging result, which they planned for, they want, and they've earned. And if you take a point away from them for that, you're then effectively asking a team with hardly any resources performing a really impressive rearguard action, which is a legitimate form of tactics in football, against a team who's got loads more resources, loads better players, and you're not going to get rewarded for that.
Yep.
And the obvious rebuttal to that is, well, how do you implement it? You can't implement it in an uneven fashion. It has to happen or not. When English football, indeed, when lots of football moved from 2 points for a win to 3 points for a win, it was done across the board.
Yeah.
So you have to do it that way. To me, it falls down that basic logical interpretation where a smaller team getting a 0-0 against a bigger team, particularly away from home, is a fucking good result.
Yeah, I
and
agree,
they should
yeah.
be rewarded for that.
Yeah, but and that's it, Luke. That's my point entirely. Gerard Piqué is from the Barcelona school of thought. We know how to play football. I played football how it should be played. Now, don't get me wrong. That Barcelona side under Pep Guardiola, there was a very persuasive argument of this is football at its finest. This is almost like
Purism.
Yeah,
Before you get overtaken by the disgusting level of piety.
fine. Absolutely, Andy. Absolutely. But
Is that Jose? Is that you?
no, but
You just poke Marks in the eye.
yeah. of course, Andy. Of course.
No one shakes hand.
But the fact is, it was quite persuasive at the time to believe that, because it was
great to watch.
It was great to watch. It was phenomenal. Never have I seen a team, probably in the history of my time watching football, where the world was completely encapsulated and intoxicated by their brand of style
And
of
it's
football.
still influential on the way that football is played and coached.
Exactly, and
Even at the lowest levels.
Yeah, and I remember having gone on holiday a few times around there to some, I was it Vietnam and then Jordan, a couple of interesting places I went to, and so many Barcelona kits completely outweighed everybody else. And normally you'd get like quite a lot of Premier League teams, Manchester United in particular, blah, blah, blah. It was just all Barcelona at that time. So he's coming from that point of view. I understand that's a long time ago now, and I understand he played for a number of years beyond that.
He's from quite a well-off background as well, though, right?
Yeah.
But whatever it is, but he is coming from that school of thought that a team holding out for a 0-0 is abhorrent to him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's where he's coming from on this. Because you're right, Andy, to say that the party of it and Luke, you're talking about a 0-0 would be a great flipping. I don't know. If Espanyol and their city rivals, of course, get a 0-0 at the Nou Camp, that's a good result for them. 99.
2-2's even better.
2-2's even better.
We got to do score 2 goals.
What are
you moaning about?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's nonsense.
It's a non-starter for those reasons, really. And I think when the two, I mean, you're going back a bit now, it's a bit before my time even, but just to give people a bit of insight, I suppose. It used to be 2 points for a win, and the authorities decided that actually it doesn't make for attacking prowess or people taking the risk. Yeah, there's not enough stake. Moving to 3 points has probably been, along with the back pass rule, those two things have been among the best things to happen.
Definitely.
Agreed.
I think this would be punishing the wrong people. If you're worried about football being continually completely uneven, the haves and the have-nots, this is going to make it worse.
And he's definitely not worried about that.
Well, he's not, no, but we are, Andy, and we're a bulwark against it.
Damn right, absolutely. Nothing more to be added to that. Now then, I've got a question from Moon.
He's always
Discord.
up in our grill.
We love Moon.
He's always giving me shit on Discord as well. He's always coming at me.
We love Moon.
Yeah, just in case you want to love him a bit more.
Even more now.
Moon asks this, do you think Premier League club crowds have lost their 12th man-ness? So often now it feels, on TV anyway, that the atmosphere in Premier League grounds is entirely reactive, only making noise when the team scores or does something positive, and they're quiet if things aren't going well. You don't really get that whole 12th man swell of noise trying to urge the team on or gee the players up if things aren't going that well. Pete and Vish both mentioned that the Liverpool PSG game was the latest example of this. Do you think there's something in it? Luke Moore.
Well, the PSG fans are really good at Anfield. They're really noisy, audible. You could hear them, and away fans generally. I mean, Andy would presumably say, because we've literally had this exact discussion this season, Andy, you and I, when we've been away, that PSG fans are quite underrated.
Yeah, they are. Shirts off in Salzburg in December.
Yeah, well, there you go. Can't argue with that. But I guess the point there is because of the type of club PSG are. Mm-hmm. People kind of bracket out the whole thing up as being like a bit of a vanity
global
exercise.
Online fan base.
We did speak about this on Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. I was just reiterating that. And the point I just wanted to make was that away fans, particularly in European games, can be a lot louder. But I think the answer that's implied in the question is true. I think it's a natural progression from the profile of people that come to top Premier League games now. I don't just mean it's not necessarily just about money, but it's about, if you go to, say, Spurs, which I do a lot, you always have that that section of the fans which are really like into it and allowed, for better or worse. It's been perhaps a bit more worse in recent months, but that's within the context of a very big stadium with a lot of tourists there. And I want to be careful how I choose my words, because I don't actually disagree in principle at all with anyone wanting to go to a game when they go and visit a city. We do it. It's absolutely fine. There's a lot of East Asian fans that go watch Spurs because of Son and stuff like that, and that really just is partly reflective of the makeup of the world as well as football. So I think the answer nonetheless though is yes. I think I'm always surprised when I go to back to Fratton Park, not a Premier League team, not a very big stadium, but it's constant, the singing. The chanting. I know it sounds like I'm bigging up my own fellow fans. I don't really mean to do that, because I wouldn't consider myself in that bracket because I hardly ever go. So I don't think I deserve to be a part of that anyway. But I went to Portsmouth at Fratton Park to play when they played QPR a few weeks ago. I'd completely forgotten how different it is. You go to Spurs, you go to Fulham, you go to Arsenal. In big moments, in big games, particularly in evening games, it can be loud. I'm not denigrating that fan base at all, but the stadiums are bigger. They're more kind of, they feel almost like more hollow, although I know Spurs have done some work with that, and Fulham perhaps isn't a great example of that.
Oh, yeah, those three teams, maybe. Yeah.
But at Fratton Park, it wasn't just that they were singing and chanting the whole way. There was a conscious effort at half-time, when Portsmouth had been really flat in the first half, to really lift the team when they came out for the second half. Portsmouth ended up winning the game. Then the fans all stayed at the final whistle, and they're still singing and chanting. Yeah. There's not that big outpouring of people leaving all at the same time, because I think it's just a standard Saturday afternoon 3 p.m. kickoff in the Championship, but it just feels different. And I think the profile of fans you're attracting to these big games in the Premier League have definitely done something to dilute the atmosphere.
I agree. And I
thought Liverpool in that PSG game at Anfield, just finally to make the point, almost astonishingly quiet. Like, for the reputation they've got.
You'd say that's an anomaly, though.
I don't know, because I've not been to Anfield enough. I don't know.
Yeah, but I certainly wouldn't.
In terms of, in context of Liverpool and European nights, I think it is fair to say that that's anomalous.
Yes, and I wouldn't compare them to certainly home crowds with Arsenal and Fulham. But anyway, Andy, you were going to say.
But I was going to say it's interesting. I don't think it's a new thing. I think if you go back over the last probably like 7 or 8 years, I think one of the biggest changes when you speak to footballers who've come from overseas to play in the Premier League, they always used to say to you, playing in the Premier League, the atmosphere in the stadiums is amazing. It's so special. It's unlike everywhere else. They cheer when you make a tackle. They don't say that anymore. Like, very few players say that to you anymore. They would openly volunteer that. If you ask them, what's the atmosphere like? They go, yeah, it's great. But it's not something that they would volunteer as a reason that attracts them to the Championship and, the English Championship in the first place. So I think it's something that's not gone unnoticed. I think money is a big part of it. And I think it's a little bit like when you go to a Premier League game, I don't think it is exclusively about tourism, football tourism, though that is an issue. It's not been very well regulated by the Premier League. I don't think the Premier League has done enough to protect what makes it special in the stadium. And I think if you look at Dortmund, for example, if you go to their ticketing page, the Borussia Dortmund ticketing page, they will give you a very detailed explanation of, we have a capacity of this size, we have this many season ticket holders, which means there are this many general sale tickets. The reason we do this is because we welcome tourists. We want you to come. We want people from all over the world to experience Westfalen and Signal Iduna Park. But we also have an obligation to the people who come regularly and an obligation to you as the people who are coming to experience it to preserve the heart of that experience.
Yeah, nice.
I don't think tourists want to come and stand with like 15,000 other tourists. They don't want that. They want to
Tell
experience...
it to Sir Jim, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. They want to experience it like it's really meant to be. And because the Premier League is ultra free market, that hasn't happened. So I think that is an issue as well. But I do think that a huge part of it has been, like, and as I said, this isn't a recent thing, the mounting cost of getting in for normal people. And it does not only change the type of people who are able to come, but the people who do come, and we all know people who put a Premier League season ticket on their credit card and end up paying it off over the whole season,
or don't have a holiday or whatever.
And then do the same the next year, and they do it year after year after year. And that does actually create a type of resentment. I mean, Jim's talked about it before, that kind of poisonous atmosphere that you had at Arsenal for a long time, where the club were continually going, thanks, we're making loads of money. We aren't charging for everything, but our financial results are excellent this year. And it just does breed this sort of resentment. So I think at a lot of Premier League grounds, you get the atmosphere that you get when you go to a gig in London, really. That sort of, not we're celebrating because you're here, that you do something to impress me and then maybe I'll respond. Which is totally different. And it's different to, say, in the Bundesliga, where, just as an example, I'm not saying it's any sort of fan panacea or anything like that, although it is, I would say, globally a better fan experience. That sense of, we are here as a participant. I don't think you really get that in Premier League grounds anymore.
I think you're right. We should also say, though, that with regards to what you said to London gigs, you won't find that at the Football Ramble.
No, absolutely.
You will find a wonderful experience, but also as well, I think that sense of expectation / entitlement, I suppose. If you've spent hundreds of millions of pounds on new players, you've got all these shiny new things. As you say, I think that
you spent hundreds of pounds on a ticket.
Yeah, and for all the other reasons you've said there, Andy, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying I think it is that people go to a match and it's kind of like, well, come on then.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's the money thing you're right to bring up. I completely forgot to mention that's definitely a huge part of it. And I think in the Championship, I think at the risk of incurring some wrath from people listening, I genuinely believe in the Championship, for the most part, the season ticket prices are really fair. Like Portsmouth's season ticket, I think you can get one for about 400. I think Coventry QPR, they're quite cheap. You know, you can get a QPR one in London for like, I think under £300. And if you think about it's 23 games, right? It's not bad.
Yeah, no,
for a day out in London. You've been serious. That's not
is,
bad. So obviously it becomes a problem because those.
I wouldn't go far as a day out in London, but yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is, what else can you do in London for that price? So if you get the season ticket with 23 games, it's £300. It's about £12 a ticket.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if there were any people thinking, what if I go with my QPR ticket to the theatre, does that also get me in?
In some places you get. In some parts of Europe, don't you get the travel as well with the season ticket?
Yeah.
You get that with. You get that.
No
with
danger in London doing that. Bloody hell. But look, I think Moon's hit on something. I think we agree.
Good old Moon.
It's an interesting. It's just the way football is going, isn't it? And I don't know how it's going to get any better. It probably won't.
Yeah.
On to slightly more important issues from Will on Instagram. With Luke growing out his tash for us.
Yeah, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you, Will.
Who has the best facial hair in football?
I'm liking Vitinha's look.
Yeah.
Subtle, but noticeable. A little bit kind of.
I think got a bit of 70s Richard Branson to it.
I didn't think that.
Oh, Catweasel vibe.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking more like a troubadour or
right, yeah, okay.
That kind of thing.
70s Richard Branson. You've done him dirty there.
Oh, you dirty bastard.
There's nothing clean about PSG.
Or your thoughts, Andy.
Yeah.
What about you, Luke? I mean, you're the one with the tash. Has anyone in particular caught your eye?
Well, I wouldn't say currently they haven't, genuinely. I think if you talk about iconic, even if I just went for just tashes only, in terms of iconic looks, you're looking at Seaman. All day long. Seaman is.
Yes.
And I would actually say early, people forget about this because he's on the TV so much and he looks great now.
Ian Rush.
Souness.
Yeah, Souness.
Lovely tash.
Yeah.
A proper full.
By the way,
cookie duster.
Ian Rush had a tash.
Yeah, of course he did.
I was going to say, you know when you know
famous.
You know, like in the American Office, does what's his name have a moustache?
Yeah.
And you're like, that's a good point now.
No, Rush definitely.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Terry
situations.
McDermott, he was the one, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I think that Will's asking about the here and now.
There's no contenders.
Does Sergio Ramos still look like he's eaten a bear and left its arse hanging out?
No, not quite.
Do you know that?
I'll tell you what, a more modern one, I would say, where Luke could give him a run for his money in sort of medium term. Davide Moscardelli, do you remember him?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So he was a guy he's a fantastic story, really. I mean, he's 45
Look at
now.
that.
So he retired a few years ago. Absolutely enormous beard. The James Harden of European football.
Yeah, nice.
So essentially, he didn't shave his beard at all for a couple of years.
It's like a journeyman striker, right?
Yeah, so he started out at a very, very low level, and then he eventually made it to the top flight in his late 20s. He was famous for scoring quite spectacular goals as well. So he was a really fun player and a really fun person as well. I mean, he was a massive YouTube sensation. Someone did a compilation of his goals, and because of how spectacular he was and how spectacular his beard was, it did 5 million views in the first fortnight or something. He was a real big cult figure.
Nice.
Do you know whose facial hair I'm enjoying? And he is in football.
Yeah.
Wazza.
Oh yeah,
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, right. Well, that's great. I love the iconic scene of Ruud Gullit and Rudi Voller spitting at each other, both with moustaches.
Frank Rijkaard.
Oh fucking hell, it was, wasn't it? Frank Rijkaard. He had a moustache, didn't he? At the time,
probably.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Rijkaard and Voller both getting sent off for spitting in each other's curly hair.
Voller was very much the victim in that situation. How he got sent off in that is beyond.
But who
me.
knows what was said?
Well, at least Voller won the World Cup, so
it's true. He got the last laugh.
He did have the last laugh, and you got the last question.
I have. Well, nice link, Marcus.
Thank you.
A few of them, and you're away. A few of them every show, you'd be fucking there. This is Ryan from Instagram. Hi to you, Ryan. He says, "Which football club do you think has the most iconic kit colours and design?"
Yeah, Real Madrid's all white is big time in it.
I think Fiorentina's I like.
Fiorentina was the one that I immediately thought, but then I did think about the all-white Real Madrid.
Well, I guess it's different because Fiorentina and Roma in particular just don't have bad kits, do they?
No, it's impossible with that colour scheme.
Fiorentina really dropped the ball last season, and you think that was a kit that was impossible to get wrong. I wonder... Second mention of Venky's in this pod. I wonder if Blackburn Rovers get in the mix.
Yeah.
Because how many halves do you get?
Yeah, iconic. I wonder also, and this I'm going to come on to a better answer in a minute, but just chucking this out there, is it quite rare second mention for Portsmouth on today's show. Is it quite rare that a team are so well known for wearing blue, Blue Army, all the rest of it, that their socks are red? So Pompey's kit is blue shirt, white.
Do you know what? I love
shorts,
the three-colour combo.
red socks. You don't see that very often.
No, you don't, and I really, really like it. I like it like the Scotland kit, navy, white, and red socks.
Yeah.
I do like, as I say, that.
It's like Hamburg and the red shorts.
Do you know what I
Iconic.
really hate though? Is Man City. Their sky blue top, white shorts, and was it navy socks?
Yeah, it's poor.
Why navy and the sky blue don't
Yeah.
work together?
I'd like to, at the risk of making myself even more unpopular today.
Yeah.
We've had a Vitinha mention. We've had a PSG fans mention. For the hat trick, the latest kit with the wings on the shoulders is good. I like that.
Fine, but it's, I mean,
It's an iconic kit.
I wouldn't.
Is it?
Iconic kit and
You
colours.
don't like it?
No, not really.
I tell you though, if we're going to take this onto the international stage, the Brazil yellow and the Argentina stripes,
Of course.
like
Yeah.
they're two gorgeous kits, like
Croatia
wonderful
in
colours.
the last 30
Croatia
years?
would be
Croatia
another one.
classic,
I would
yeah.
even say the Italy blue, just because
Yes.
how
Yes.
successful they've
Yeah.
been, of course,
Oh,
over the
agreed.
years, and,
There's a lot out
and
there.
that jersey, yeah. I mean, yeah, you could just go around the houses and go Liverpool red, Man United. So, but it's a little bit more distinctive, which of course Fiorentina are. I think both Milan sides with their stripes, you just that little bit of extra detail. But again, though, with Real Madrid, the all white is just like.
Pompous.
It's pompous,
Arrogant.
totally.
I think
not as pompous and arrogant as it was with the Sunday League side in my old league that would wear that kit as well. The previous year
Did
they
you
had.
beat 'em?
We would beat them. Yeah, we would. They were like.
What, the actual Real Madrid kit?
Oh, the full kit.
So they just bought it?
Yeah.
No
You
way.
get
Yeah.
a proper kit a lot cheaper than that.
Yeah, to be fair to them, the previous season they had the full Barcelona kit.
Think of the washing, though.
They had the full Barcelona
So
kit the
they
previous
went
season.
from Barcelona to Real Madrid in successive seasons.
I've got so many problems with that. It's unbelievable.
Oh, they should be thrown out.
First
the
of
league.
all, it's way more expensive to do it that way.
Yeah.
Second of all, you've got to clean it.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, that's the least of the criticisms I think most people had. But I should say that if anyone is in any doubt about this group of people who were playing for that team, they were all wankers.
that's you saying that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But they didn't win the league once when we were playing, and there anyway, get a bit Roy Keane here. So what was I going to say? Real Madrid, Barcelona again, another one. I really like Atletico's kit.
Yeah, I
Again,
think
the
that's-
three colours, the red, white, and the blue shorts. I adore that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
drilling back down into Ryan's question about the most iconic kit colours and design, I think that's where, and I don't want to pick on any manufacturer in particular because they've all like made bad mistakes at various points and stuff that we disagree with, but a couple of years back, I think we go back 3-4 years, and Nike did a sort of crinkle cut stripe thing, and that both messed with both the Inter traditional
Yes, they did.
Nerazzurri,
That's right.
and the Rocky Blanco Atletico, and I could not be more against that. Like sort of wavy stripes and
Yeah.
stuff. If we're talking about coming away from an iconic design, as you say,
Andy, those days are past, and in the past they must remain.
There's a couple of There's a
go
couple
crazy
of things,
with your away kit.
couple of things on
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but I think sometimes now kits are far too often cookie cutter designs just
Yes.
chucked across
Yes.
loads of different teams.
Yeah.
And that's annoying. But
A template,
on
yeah.
the other
They've always
hand,
been like that, though.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you can't be messing too much with a classic.
Yeah.
Because it represents more than just the
Totally.
shirt. And if you mess with it too much, I think it's disrespectful, actually.
And I might just end with going back to the international stage because we have to mention the Netherlands with that
Yeah.
orange kit. It's, and what those bright coloured kits do, they really lend themselves to the stadium and the fans because
Yeah.
it's just so noticeable.
And it
It's
also-
one of the sort of slightly
The
annoying
way
things.
you see Dutch fans at every tournament
Yeah.
from a mile off, and everyone's wearing orange.
Yeah.
And
It's
all
one
of
of the
them
most amazing
are
experiences.
having a smoke. Aren't they? You just know, you stick that shirt on, you can have a smoke. and a pancake.
I know, yeah. Because, I mean, the nickname of the Netherlands is, of course, the Orange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Or the Bifter Boys as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening to the Football Ramble. Thank you for listening to the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network. Oh, the air's gone funny in here.
Thank you to Acast.
We'll be back on Monday with Jim Vish and Peach to react to the weekend football. Please do send us your responses, opinions, and questions for next week's episode, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Sorry, Dutch people.
That's the last few Dutch people listening to this show that have gone now. That's them.
We love your colour, though.
Yeah.
There we are. Have a marvellous rest of the weekend. See you Monday.